All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another live stream where we're going to try and cover as much as possible of the recently released World Creator 2023 beta. If you have these, I think it is open to everyone or maybe just a select few, I can't recall. But if you have access to it, definitely dive into it and let us know if you have any questions on it, especially throughout this stream. If you have any questions about any aspect that I cover, I will be sure to answer it as promptly as possible and to try and help direct you into a direction to understand a bit of the process a bit further. So again, we're going to cover as much of this as possible today. We have a little under 2 hours to go. And so we're just going to get started right off with a brand new project. You get a new loading screen here. So in your recent projects and a few other things are going to be updated along the way. I don't think there's any new announcements for the software as a whole, except for was told that you can expect an update to this particular version this upcoming Friday is the plan. With that becomes a plethora of bug fixes, a couple new features, which we'll touch on here in just a little bit. I'm not running that particular version yet, but maybe we can do another stream to kind of highlight some of those particular features. So for now, let's go ahead and start a new project and just see where we get today. All right, so if you've had a chance to dive into this, you'll know a few things. But if you haven't had a chance to dive into it, welcome to the new update, to the new user interface. World Creator or Stefan did a live stream on their Twitch channel this past Friday. So if you've watched that, some of this may be a little bit repetitive. Some of it may not be. So if you haven't watched that on Friday, then go ahead and take a look at what he kind of showcased. And so if you have watched that, some of this, like I said, will be a little bit repetitive, but that's all right. The more, the merrier. So with what comes with 2023 at this point, 0.1 beta. Well, we have a completely new user interface as we've showcased in prior streams. And the whole workflow is one of the first things that we're going to try and cover this morning, is kind of to understand the pipeline. This UI may feel a little different at first, but as far as your understanding of the workflow it takes to design a terrain is fairly similar to what you've probably been used to. It's still a top-down system, it's a layer-based system, but instead this left panel here is a sort of a graph in terms. It's a drop-down graph of different settings, different options, different layers, similar to other programs like Blender or Unreal or even Unity. So sort of the structure is still the same in terms of those softwares, and how you go about basically layering it is by stacking each element. So at the end of the day, what's on top is what's on top. What's on bottom is what's on bottom. But also in that left panel here is various options to go through. As you can see, the top option here is terrain. So this will be the tab or the area that we do everything about the terrain itself. Scene is everything to do with what you see in our viewport here. We can collapse these so that you can sort of see what the different categories are, and you can expand each and every one of them. So this is very similar to changing what's viewed in the environment. So with lighting, I think this lighting right now is a little bit too harsh. So let's turn down the sun strength, maybe the sky strength, and we can get this at an angle that is a little bit more presentable for showcasing. So you can basically play around with the different rendering settings, camera settings. Eventually, I'll talk about camera in a little bit, but we're going to have more camera options, not just in here, but in the left graph where you can set up actual camera locations. You can jump to and from different multiple cameras. You can. The goal is to have different camera options per camera. So if you're one of the many people that have asked for the ability to do like various render settings for different cameras, or even like a movie sequence. Perhaps that can happen. I don't know the full pipeline of that yet, but I know the goal is to basically have multiple cameras, and you can set up different blooms. You can have different, I don't know if clouds or water will be options for different effects, but that's just one of the goals that's going to happen. Let's see. Real quick question from David is how to paint a specific area for a biome mask, which I think we're covering today. Yes. And then, oh yeah, by the way, as he pointed out, I am recording this right now in 4K 60 frames per second for anyone who supports Patreon. But this stream on YouTube will be available at its current resolution, which should be 1440p. It should be available immediately after the stream ends. So you don't have to worry about this disappearing. It's going to be able for you to view immediately. But yes, we are going to be covering masking in various ways, masking for not just filters, but specifically I am going to target biomes pretty heavily here in just a few minutes. So we're going to skip over the rest of the scene settings for now. They're pretty self-explanatory. Clouds. Oh, clouds are... I don't think they're 100% working yet, so I wouldn't try and dive into that. Water is up and running, so you can adjust water settings. The terrain settings, which I like to, by default, for terrain, is to take this soil height and make it 0. You can see the side right here is changing that default soil depth. So for me, I like it to just be maybe a hair... Yeah, maybe just a hair above, so that we can really know where the flattest points are, and it's a little bit more graphically in tune to what we're seeing. All right, and so next on the list here is export. We're not going to cover export right now, but I will showcase some export options. And preset. Preset is one of the new features that Stefan kind of showcased a little bit on Friday. To my knowledge, these presets aren't active yet, but the premise of presets are that you can create your own. You can import another user's preset, and presets will have things like if you've designed a biome, whether procedurally or manually, you can save any biome that you want as a preset. You can save any grouping of filters or materials as a preset. And then you can use that in other projects, or send it off to whomever. So for like biome, this is empty right now, but biome will just be a list of different terrain biomes right here that you have created yourself or imported. Distribution presets, if you've created multiple different types of distribution rules, you can do custom gradients. If you have a custom gradient, you can import that here, as well as gradient. You can have here's the here's custom gradients that World Creator has selected or created. But if you want to hit the folder icon, you can create your own. So my personal folder, you can rename folders, so you can add multiple. It just crashed. Obviously, that is not working yet. So there are some bugs. Let's go back to new. And let's just go back to the presets. So obviously you can't add a gradient yet, but if you were to add your own section here, you can add gradients and materials. If you have your own material library, this is some sort of setup for materials that work with gradients that we can kind of showcase later. But the whole point of the entire preset panel here, and let me just go ahead and expand all of these, is that if you have a preset, like in this case, gradients. All right, so World Creator has a list of gradients here. If I wanted to click on snow here, I can drag and drop this snow gradient onto a material or onto something, and it would work instantly. Vice versa, you can drag and drop any of these presets onto another layer, onto another material, onto a filter, and it will, and that preset will be applied to whatever that works with. Right now, presets aren't functioning. They're physically here, But to my knowledge, the sort of drag and drop feature isn't in just yet. Is ASC format already supported? That is a great question that I do not have the answer to. I don't think it is, but I definitely know that it's in the pipeline to be added if it's not already added. They're going to try to have as many sort of formats as possible. So I don't think, and we're going to cover export, I don't think ACS format for exporting or importing is, that's my knowledge that it's not in yet, but perhaps it will be soon. So presets is going to be a really cool thing to be able to sort of collaborate with a bunch of other users. And it's going to be a really good sort of groundbreaking feature that hasn't been in prior versions, because then we can really sort of hone into on your own personal customization as well as the customization of others. And of course, all of this will be further expanded as time goes on. Options is just general stuff like your map tiler token, screenshots, generator stuff, texture import patterns. That's not editable yet, but it will be later. So more options, just general program options are right there. And UI settings, you can change various elements to all of the different pieces to the user interface. For example, under main container, we can change the global scale of the entire interface here. I'm going to try and keep it a little larger so that you can kind of see a little bit better. But you can change the padding, the margins. Eventually, you're going to be you're going to be able to change the font if you want. And as well as all of the colors. So there's going to be a variety of different things that you can adjust to make the program a little bit more personal to you if that's what you want. So yeah, there's more options that are going to be coming to this, but right now it's kind of basic. It would be awesome to paint biomes. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is exactly what we are about to do here fairly soon. So you're going to be spending most of your time in this terrain tab. So there's a little drop-down arrow here that expands everything about the terrain itself. So the terrain is split up into the physical biomes, which is this first layer category. This next category is biome layers. So that's basically could be referred to as masking layers for biomes specifically. Shape layers have to do with everything about like importing height maps, stamping alpha masks, sculpting, using the map tiler feature. And mask layers are just very similar to, if you've used World Creator 2, it would be the equivalent of the areas tab. So setting up different areas for masking whatever you want. And we can link any filter, any material to any one of these mask layers that we're going to be creating. Let's see, like for example, I want this painted line to be shoreline or a beach. Yeah, we're definitely going, well, that's one thing that you can do is you can create, you can have a preset that is sort of a beachy preset if you figured that out. If you've created a good biome or a good biome for islands or cliffs that has a good beach edge, you can export that biome out as a preset and you can use that later on however you want, which is really cool. All right, so the first option as far as workflow is concerned is obviously you're going to want to know what your design terrain size is. If you're doing this procedurally and not doing any sort of custom, very much custom work, then it doesn't really matter what size you use. You can do 1K, you can do 2K, and you can see it's expanding out, 4K, 8K, all the way up to 32K. These are sort of the basic buttons to kind of get you some size. You can actually manually change the width and height, or the width and length of the terrain to be whatever size you want. So this width and height option here is very key if you're wanting to export very specific file sizes. In this case, if you're trying to export to Unreal. If there's enough time later today, we are going to jump into Unreal and kind of showcase a little bit of some of the workflow, not so much the material setup, but maybe the physical actual terrain sizes. Hey, DK, thanks for joining. Hope you're well this morning. Let's see. Okay, good question. So we're going to cover, hopefully in the later half of this, we're going to cover Unreal a little bit further with the bridge. The bridge tool doesn't work with this version yet. It will very, very soon. But I am going to showcase the exact same pipeline with the previous version of World Creator on how to use Bridge and when and why you should use it and why you shouldn't use it. Yes, we're going to talk about the Unreal workflow. So real quick, this is also where it's very key to understand about the Unreal workflow is this width and height. Not so much if you're doing a procedural landscape. If you're doing very specific file terrain sizes, like I said, in line with Unreal, you'll change that here. So let me open up let's see, Unreal technical guide here. And I'll just show this real fast. So under Unreal's technical guide, I highly recommend if you're doing anything with Unreal Engine to really read the landscape technical guide that they have in their online documentation. Pretty much anything with landscapes, really read it through because it's going to really explain the process and how it's all set up. A lot of it's automated now for you, especially whenever they added world partition. So, all right, so the recommended landscape sizes. This is what you're going to basically change the width and height here. So your max file size or max landscape size for it, the base landscape is just at 8K. However, with Unreal Engine 5.1 or 5.2, can't remember which one it is, but since Unreal Engine 5, landscape sizes can be much larger than this with a single file size, I believe, but there's some nuances to that. We're going to have a dedicated stream someday later regarding everything specific around Unreal Engine landscapes. But the premise is if you want to match something that is the Unreal convention, you use this overall file size and you just type it in manually here. Let's see. What settings do I need to use to import a 16K map into Unreal Engine? This is somehow a mystery to me until today because nothing I have tried. So a 16-kilometer map. There are a variety of things that you can do, like in this case, 16K. You could, if you wanted to, split this up into 4. But I want to say one of the features that I can't remember which version of Unreal it is now, if it's even allowed yet, but I believe you could import a texture that's 16K, but I'm not completely versed into it just yet. But I know that, and we'll cover this here in a little bit, if you have a 16K or a 32K map here, the general rule of thumb is for Unreal, if you have a landscape any larger than that 8129 resolution, so anything larger than 8K, you're going to want to split it up because World Partition treats each one of those landscape elements differently if it's split up versus if it's all one landscape. I believe that's the general rule of thumb, but don't hold me to that. But even on exporting, if you had a 16K, you can export in the export section, you can split the terrain into multiple landscapes. I gotcha. Yeah, so that would be the use case then. You would just split the land. You would export the landscape out of World Creator here as a split landscape. You can split it up into 4, 8, 60 different landscapes, however you want, and you can just import those all very roughly individually, or actually you can import all of those in together into Unreal. We're not going to cover that today, but like I said on a later stream, we're definitely going to cover everything with Unreal specifically for small and large terrains. We can do sort of a quick path with bridge, I think, that I'll showcase later on. So, all right, moving forward, we're going to basically break down a little bit further the biome system. So I think you guys understand the terrain, the main terrain tab here a little bit. You choose the size, you choose which precision you want. Right now it's at 1 meter. You want to increase the mesh density of the landscape. You do a smaller meter, or if you want it to be every 2 meters, 4 meters, this is just precision is just your mesh density. And we've covered many times before, preview is sort of the LOD system in World Creator. If we have a 32K map here, you can see the landscape in the foreground has gotten really low in resolution. That's to help save use on resources. If we do it based on camera, you can see if I zoom in, everything that is 1 kilometer, 124 meters by 124 meters around the center of the camera will be, you can see the LOD system is just blending that together, and you can see the full resolution of whatever your terrain is up close. So if you want it to be a specific spot, specific location, as you move around, you can see that little red line right there. So this is the set location. I believe we can edit this. I'm not going to worry about editing it. So we're going to do none, and we're just going to go back to 2K so that we can kind of see full results. All right, let's see what you got. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, no problem. All right, so again, terrain, and then the terrain is then split up into the 4 sections. All right, so biomes. All right, so now we have the ability to design multiple biomes, paint multiple biomes wherever we want. So we're going to do this drop down, and here's the global biome. It doesn't have to be the global biome. You can add any number of biomes. This is just sort of the beginner text. We can name this as, we'll just call this Biome 1. So this is the very first biome. And within this biome, we have the options to change the filters of that biome or what materials we see in that biome. So that's the 2 sort of main subsections of each and every biome you create. You hit the plus icon next to biomes to create multiple biomes so that we can see this is now biome 2, and this will be biome 3. So we can create multiple biomes. Right now, all of these are just overlapping each other. So each one of these 3 biomes are overlaid on top of each other. So that's why you didn't really see anything change. What could be good about this sort of pipeline is, say in biome 1 is where you, if you wanted to organize it this way, you could. You can do biome 1 is all of your sort of procedural elements, your filter elements. If you have an area that we're going to paint in a little bit, where say, all right, I want this biome to be have a different set of materials, but I want the filters to be the same. So really the only thing in biome 2, if that was the case, you would just change some of the colors. Or biome 3, if you want it to be somewhere over here, I want a filter for the cliffs here to be very specific, but I want to separate it by biomes, you can. But generally, you don't have to do that. You could literally just do everything in one specific biome. The whole premise behind having multiple biomes is so that each individual biome could be what you think a biome would be. So biome 1 could be this area over here on the left is tropical. Biome 2 could be a desert area over here on the right. And biome 3 could be sort of an arid climate right here. Or it could be microbiomes. It could be biome 1, which could be an entire, fill this up with an entire desert. But biome 2 is the little ponds and water areas with some trees and grass and stuff specifically around a low-lying area. It could be a microbiome. So to further exemplify this and to get rid of anything in here, you just hit the delete key. The sort of drag this off the screen to an X isn't available yet, but it could be something that's added back. All right, so can I use it to make a map that, for example, uses mountains on one side of the map and rock cliffs on the other? Exactly. You could do that. Well, you could technically do that with one single biome. And we'll kind of showcase that here in a little bit. For what you're talking about there, you could either do that with multiple biomes if that's going to help you understand sort of the pipeline better, or you can do it under one single biome and then use you can mask in different filters or different shapes or different sculpting effects in that area. It's just whatever way is easiest for you to understand. It's just that each biome has the option to change filters and materials individually. So we're going to have one biome here. Now, if I want to manually sculpt in a different biome, so let's have this, we have, I believe, a 2K. Yep, we have a 2K map right now. And this biome is painted blue. We can hit the little show biomes button here, and you can see that the entire landscape is covered in blue. So let's further showcase what I mean about biomes and their masking of different areas. So we have biome 1 here. So biome layers is the area where we're going to decide where the biome is going to be distributed on the landscape. Now, you may think that biome layers should be within the biome itself. Like, all right, this biome, if I were to add a second one, where is it being oriented at? Sort of has the hierarchy, which that's the case, but perhaps in biome layers, it's separated so that you can see it a little bit easier, but they are going to be linked back to these. So for the sake of understanding, I'm going to make a brand new biome layer. And so you can see now it's added a little mask here, and this mask is tied to, you can see we can choose which biome it is. Right here, it's the only biome option is biome 1. And so let's just name this biome 1 mask. All right, so as I move this biome mask around, you can see it's just procedurally filling in whatever that detail is for this first biome. If we were to lower this general strength all the way down, you can see now this general strength is all the way down. And so each individual biome also has its own strength controls, which you're all certainly aware of by now. But if you're brand new, each main biome layer here lets you choose all the fractal noise properties of the biome. You can offset the fractal noise properties. You can adjust the level steps. Each one of these numbers, the higher the number, the higher the resolution detail you're affecting on the terrain. The lower the number, the broader resolution detail you're affecting on the terrain. And then you have sort of these procedural preset shapes. Right now it's classic. You can do canyon, cracks, dunes, islands, mountains, mountain ranges, etc. More will come, and we're going to kind of showcase a little bit of this here in just a second. But the main premise is that we're focused on right now is biome layers. So you can see I can change this, and with this, it is going to be whatever size we want. Right now, it's just a perfect square, I believe. But if you want to edit this even further, we obviously just hit the edit button. So edit. And then what we can do within this boundary, let's go ahead and click clear. So we've completely erased. All right, so I'm holding control and scrolling up and down on my mouse wheel to change the brush radius. But let's go ahead and make the brush strength down here 100%. So if I start to paint in this biome, you can see that I have, basically painted in exactly where we want this biome. And we can move this around so that what you're painting really in this edit option is the mask for this entire layer. And so it's obviously not going to be the same shape. That's because biome 1 is a procedurally generated biome, or a procedurally generated noise properties. So all you're doing is you're just moving the mask wherever that fractal noise is. Yeah, it's really great. And we can, again, change it however we want. One cool thing about this as well, let's go ahead and do back to edit and fill. So we are filling in the entire square here. One thing you have to also keep in mind of is the blend size and blend roundness. If you want all the detail that is part of this particular biome, but you don't want these sharp edges, then you can pull in the blend size. You can see it's sort of feathering that edge a little bit. And if you want to round the corners, so however square this is, you can just round the corners a little bit. You can see right here it's smoothing a little bit further. So going at about maybe 70%, you can see that it is almost acting like an alpha stamp, which is where we're going to get to here next with shape layers. So let's go ahead and just fill this completely up. So biome 1 is, again, filling up the entire terrain. So this terrain, let's change its base shape to something like, let's see what mountain range looks like, or canyon, cracks. Okay, let's just use this for example. So it's sort of this procedurally generated crack system, and we can change a variety of options to change how these oddly shaped alien cracks are presented. So I'm going to turn off fast render, and I'm going to hit the show biomes icon here so we can see everything is blue. So that's represented again of biome 1. Let's add a second biome. All right, so this one's going to be orange. You see nothing has happened because it is just overlapping each other. There's no information, there's no new information in the second biome. So let's call this biome 2. And let's say that if we were to hit show biomes, it's still going to be showing the base layer because we don't really have any additional information of biome 2 at this time since we've established this as biome 1. If I were to reduce the size of the biome 1 mask, then no, obviously nothing still happens because biome 1 mask is sort of the bottom layer. So let's add a second mask here. So we're going to call this one biome 2 mask. But for this one, since nothing is showing, you see it's still assigned to biome 1. Let's change this to biome 2. You can see now, if I were to hide biome 1, this information you see on screen is biome 2. If I were to turn biome 1 back on, you can see this mask or this layer is popping in what biome 2 looks like. Again, we can change the roundness, the blend size, and so we can basically have sort of a custom shape here. If I wanted to, say, pull this down, all right, and let's say for biome 2, for example, we want the strength for biome 2 to be super high. So we're going to increase the general strength to 100%. All right, so biome 2, you can see that there's a difference in detail between biome 1 and biome 2 right here. But I don't want this to be representative of everywhere. So let's edit this, clear, and now let's go back and say, all right, let's stop editing. Let's say for this little weird shaped trapezoid, I just want that extra detail to be applied right there. All right, so biome 2, let's see, we have all of our extra settings here. So for biome 2, we will increase that detail right there. And then maybe we will go ahead and we can pull that in a little bit. So let's say we've added extra detail right there, and you can see that's how we see it. So we can show biomes. So now this is where we can easily see, if I were to turn off show mask, we can see with the biomes, this is sort of how we edit that biome. We could make it the brush strength a little bit less. So if we wanted to add a little bit more detail specifically to this top area, and that's still a bit too strong. Let's do, there we go. So 1%, there we go. So we are just painting in a little bit more detail with biome. Now, right now, biomes they definitely overlap each other. So perhaps with biome mask 2, there will be, as part of the blending size, this is an additional part that I was talking about, is biome 2, we need to have the option to where the strength is overlapping. Like there's no operation modes on biomes yet. You remember with filters and materials, specifically materials, what what would be filters? We'll cover that in a second. With filters and materials and masks, there's an operation mode. So which one's added on, which one's being multiplied, which one's being subtracted, which one's being overriding. The feature for biomes or biome layers to basically be blended in with another biome isn't in yet. You would think it would be. It was a feature in World Creator 2022, but that's not in just yet. So you can kind of edit these around and make however you want. So that's one of the beauties of this is we can basically paint in a variety of biomes. Let's see, show mask area. Yeah, so this area, we want this biome to be something else. Let's add a third biome, make this one completely red. We will add a third biome mask. So call this biome 3 mask. Change its link to, we didn't change this to biome 3. All right, so biome 3 mask to biome 3, and we can see this procedural element. So one thing that's really cool is for biome 3, all right, let's say we want this one to be dunes, and then we can turn its strength down a little bit. So we've turned that strength down for biome 3. You can see here, we've made dunes out of biome 3, but let's reduce its blend size. All right, so right there. So biome 3 is overlapping the other two biomes, and we are procedurally generating where we want some dunes. All right, I hope that makes sense on how to sort of visually see the different biomes on where they are, how you could paint and edit different biome sections. You can reorient these how if you want. If I want biome 2 mask to be on top, it's on top now. If I want biome 1 mask to be back on top, it's back on top. So you can reorient which mask has the higher priority. Right now it's biome 2. So there we go. Biome 2 is now the hierarchy. Let's see, can you paint biome mask layers? Yeah, I must have missed that question earlier because you can literally just do that. Again, with edit, show mask to see the area. Some of these colors for the masks are going to change a little bit. So yeah, we can paint this in. We can erase some of it. We can erase some of it out. Some of these other options, like smooth, say you used, and this isn't in just yet, you used an alpha texture to, instead of this, you're going to be able to have this shape be able to change to whatever you want. If you want it to be a square, you can have a square brush. So different brush shapes are coming, but there's different tools here for rotating the effect, for mirroring the mask that you've painted inside. So there's, what you have to understand here is there's two different sort of masking elements. There's the mask of the actual layer, which is the bounds. Let me do this. Make this smaller. So there's the actual mask of the layer itself, which is just the entire layer. But then there is the mask that you're painting within the bounds. So it's all the same terminology. It's just how you want it to be represented. And you can change the sort of interpolation method if it's linear, smooth, spherical, or sharp. I actually did, if you go to another video on my YouTube channel, I actually did a World Creator 2022 video that kind of showcased how to understand all the shape layers specifically, or sculpting layers. And I go through each and every one of these methods individually. That's a really, really good live stream that kind of, I would say, painstakingly goes through each and every one of these buttons on what they do specifically. And that sort of rule is still applied as well. Biome distributions. Yeah, so that's basically what biome layers are. There's more functionality to this that's going to come. I believe I have talked about having biomes, or having biomes specifically have distribution rules applied to them. but that's not the general focus, I would say. Is with biomes, you're creating sort of the main large scale system, and within each biome, you're doing all the different sort of distribution roles within that. But you can look at biome layers as sort of the distribution method for biomes, and more features, like I said, are going to be coming into the pipeline so that you can, distribute a biome any different way that you want. So I think that covers a good bit about biomes specifically. Did you guys have any other questions about how to set up biome layers, how to understand the different workflow here between the 3 different biomes that I have set up, the hierarchy that's involved? One thing is for sure that if you do layers and you increase the size of the terrain, right now it's 2K, but I increase it to 4K, the rest of it's not going to have any information because you've quite literally created masks that, segregate where the information is going. If you want to have these 3 different masks and a procedural element, I believe it works well if we added a 3rd biome, put it at the bottom, let's just add a 4th biome here. We'll just call this the global detail. All right, and then we need to add, and I think this is something that's going to change. It's a bug for now. So this is one of the things with the operation modes that I'm talking about. If global detail was the actual global detail, we wouldn't have to add a mask for it, but we're going to need to add a mask. We'll put this mask at the bottom and do global detail, fit that to terrain, and sort of global detail could be down here. Actually, let's just put it back up at the top, global detail. And then we'll just have this sort of be a canyon of sorts. So global detail, and really what happens is this mask is, these colors are tied to, these mask layers, which is a bug right now, these mask layers are tied to the orientation of what these are. If I were to pull this down, you can see the mask layers have really switched gears here. And so it's kind of hard to tell what was what. So it's one of those, it's just a bug right now to really know what's what. So that's why we're just going to have global detail at the top here to kind of exemplify that scenario. I believe this one was blend size. We can pull each one of these down a little bit. And so now we have 4 different biomes here, which you can't really tell yet because they're all the same color. So I'm understanding how this works with biomes. Yeah, of course. It's fairly simple. It's still a little, of course it has some kinks to fix right now. And I think the major kink is to make sure that the color of the global detail kind of lines up with whatever mask you've linked it to, as well as specifically with the global biomes here, we need to have the operation modes back in here. I don't believe we have those at all. Yeah, that's base detail, that's all the base detail. So we don't have the operation modes for biomes in here yet to say, all right, this one is, going to overwrite whatever's in this one. But that's also what biome layers is for, Let's just delete this. That's what biome layers is for, is so that you can have control on really which mask is on top of the other. But there should be a little bit more fine-tuned control within each biome system, or perhaps with biome layers, there's some more information here. So it's just a little bit working order, but you get the idea, I believe, with the masks, which is really cool because this is the way that you can really set up a wide variety of different features. So, all right, let's now, I believe, what size terrain we have. Let's go back to 2. Let's delete these 2 biomes. So we'll delete, and delete. So we're going to go back to the first biome and do classic. Let's just make this 4K. All right. So we've removed the biome layers. So let's go over shape layers now. It's really better as the old world creator. Yeah, it's a whole lot better, I feel, than the original world creator. So, and some people were kind of upset also about the fact that they were changing the user interface yet again, which I can take the full blame for that because I kind of pushed for something different. World Creator 2020, well, basically from 2020 to 2022, the user interface was kind of in a flux area of trying to figure out its identity. And through all of that, I came up with a sort of very schematic idea of how I thought this should be laid out. And so me and the developers kind of went back and forth and agreed on this sort of workflow with everything selectable to edit as on the left and all the properties for what you select is editable on the right. So I can take the blame for kind of pushing their hand to make this user interface change, make this workflow change, but I think for the long run, it's going to be the right call. So anyway, the next thing I wanted to touch on is shape layers. So shape layers is, I'll touch on this in a little bit with groups. So with shape layers is everything like sculpting, importing map information, importing height map information. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the little plus icon. And so you can see we have a sculpt layer to choose from, stamp layer, procedural layer, and a map tile layer. So we'll start off with procedural layer. And you can see just like with the biome layers, it's just a little tiny little mask. You can think of this and you can change its scale really well in whatever shape. So right now, this procedural layer is classified as a volcano. And we have a few different ones from crater, a single crack, which is really cool. We can rotate this and expand this out a little bit further if we wanted to, and we can kind of cut this stuff away. If we wanted to adjust that crack, again, the blend size, we can pull this in, or blend roundness to round off the corners. Let's see, blend size, yeah. And we can kind of put this crack into its home right here. All right. So procedural layers are pretty much similar to the sort of shape, the sort of procedural general shape that you have with biomes, where it says basic shape type. It's very similar to these sort of procedural elements. This list is going to increase. And I believe as part of a preset, again, if with presets, if you have sort of a procedural element that you've created, you can save it in a preset, and you should be able to drag that preset on top of procedural here and change the shape however you've designed that element. So there's various different things you can do with procedural elements, and that's pretty much what it stands for. If you have a cliff, and I believe one of you talked about a cliff on one side and mountains on another, you could do your cliff on one side, and we can create a mask to paint this out here in a little bit. You can, let's see, noise scale, you can change. Yeah, there's just some various details that we can apply here. Height offset, if that's a little too low, we can increase this and pull in the blend rounded edges a little bit. Which level step, you get to choose which level step you want it to be applied to. So that's something to keep in mind. But really, I would say for these procedural elements to stick with them around the 3 to 6 range. I wouldn't go too high, because you're going to want your detailing in the biome to kind of really guide that. Let's see. All right. Thanks for translating that to English. Is there a possibility to use something like color gradients in the side view of the terrain? I would like to display a terrain cross-section with several layers of earth. That is a good question. I believe that was something that was an option in World Creator 2. And so for reference, what they're asking is this on the side of this soil right here, to be able to see various soil layers. Right now, it's just one single color. Right now it's white. I believe we can change, let's see. If I remember correctly, level state, main container. Now I've lost where. Oh, it's on scene. See, I can't. So it's in scene. If I were to reduce all these so that you can see a little bit better. So here's soil height. We kind of touched on changing the height of this side soil again. You can change it to whatever you want. And you can change its color to be whatever color you want. But right now, this color as a gradient isn't available to change as a gradient, but I can foresee that being very easy to do. Like right here, some presets that you're going to be able to change later. So perhaps one of these is a gradient. Or if you've created your own preset gradient, here you'll be able to drag and drop that gradient potentially right over the soil color, and it'll do just that. I think a side view like that would be pretty nice indeed. Especially, of course you can, it would be good if that side soil were tied to the sediment layers. So you can, and we're going to touch on this, you can have filters with sediment simulation properties, and perhaps depending on what's being cut here on the side, depends on what color is realistically showing. So what would be cool is if you have a sediment layer that is classified as a rock, so it's not going to move. And then right here, you have a sediment layer that's classified as dirt or sand, and it will move. Where this cuts would be really cool if you could see sort of like part of the rock profile that's not going to be cut. I don't think that is something you can envision coming soon, but I could see that happening. Tilt the X section color layers, cross section. I'll mention that to the developers to be able to change the soil color to be a gradient would be really cool. I think being able to change this to a gradient would be much easier than being able to change it to the whole simulation stuff that I was sort of promoting there haphazardly. So, all right, so we have this stamp that is one aspect. Let me just delete that and do another procedural. So we'll just keep this one as a sort of volcano layer here. And so here's with shape layers is also the layers that you can do operations. Right now, this operation is set to overwrite, but if I select add, you can see that it is going to add this procedural element on top of whatever the detail is in the current landscape, which is really nice. So if I were to go to fast view here, so you can see this a little easier. All right, so I'm moving this volcano around, and it is now blending in or adding on top of the detail on the terrain. And so blend size isn't going to do a whole lot. It'll kind of smooth up that edge a little bit. But yeah, there we go. We can add that in. We can change, maybe it's a crater. Let's see, if we were to change its depth, there we go. You can see that crater forming right there. Inner fall off, there we go. So we're adding a crater to the existing detail. All right, so that is the sort of procedural shape. Let's now add a stamp layer. So a stamp layer is essentially you stamping in anything that is dealing with depth masking. So a height map, an alpha map, anything that is a grayscale texture map. Oh, well, by the stamp layer and volcano, I can change the setting under the operation to add, and the volcano merges. Yes, with the landscape, so adapts to the rest. Exactly. And you have a few other operations like min and max, but overwrite and add are going to be your go-tos. Right now, I've got it at overwrite, so you can see the detail is literally stamping nothing. And so let's go ahead and click on none to add a height map in this case. I have a few RD textures here. Let's just choose a rock. Let's see, let's do... Now you don't necessarily have to use, so I have RD textures here and you see this depth mask, or this is basically a height map, but they call it a depth map. So this image is the height map for this particular texture, but anything that's grayscale or black and white will work. If you import a color, it is going to convert that to black and white anyway at whatever values that is. So it doesn't have to be specifically a texture that or a map that is a height map or depth map. I can import this gloss map. I'm not sure as to the limitations of what image files can come in here yet. Obviously right here, it's going to accept any typical image files, even EXR, which is really nice. So I'm going to import, go ahead and drag and drop. Actually, you can just select that and hit open. All right, so right here is that rock texture, but it's a little low in quality right now when that is your control on how you want that to be displayed. So right now it's being imported at level step 5. So what that means is the image, the detail that this particular map is coming in at is going to be applied at level step 5. So any detail that you add on top of this with filters on level step 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 will be added on top of this. If you were to add detail that's on level step 4, it's not going to change so much in this square because the operation mode in this case is set to overwrite. If I were to set this to add, you can see that detail is just being applied right on top of, you can add some texture basically to your landscape however you want, which is really cool. So basically the higher level step you put forth, the higher the resolution the detail is going to come in. So right now the highest resolution that we're able to pull in from that texture is at level step 10. So this is basically the full resolution of that texture. You can see it's really cutting the edges here, but again, we can change the blend size or the blend roundness a little bit. And so this is your stamp here. But again, we can change this to add, and that detail, as you can see, is really cool. Let me turn off fast render. You can, and apparently, turn off biomes as well. You can see that with the stamp, you're just applying detail on top of your map here, any way you want. So that's the whole premise of stamps. It's really cool. It's really fast. It can be whatever shape you want. Let's see. So the shapes can move around, but moving biome layers just reveals a different part of a biome, it seems. Yeah. So if you move the biome layers around, it's going to change the hierarchy of that particular biome. And moving those around, right now, biome layers are locked to a square. Right here, I can literally rotate. Well, with biome layers, you can also rotate. I don't know if I did that earlier. You can rotate a biome layer. But right now, the sort of shape of it, I think, is locked to a square. And I think that is a coding restriction having to do with, especially if a biome is doing a bunch of procedural generation, like the filters. I think that's an issue with the generation, with the fractal noise being able to be squished like this. I'm not entirely sure. But yes, with shapes, you can literally rotate them, shape them, and we can create a mask layer to them, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But seemingly, if you're creating a stamp, you're going to control what it looks like through here. That is one feature that if we decided to create a mask layer, this mask layer is going to be tied to something. And I'll explain this in just a little bit, but that is one of the missing features for stamps as well as biome layers, is I want there to be the option to have a mask for the stamp. Right now it's just your stamp. So somewhere in here, we'll have the option to say, hey, this area or this mask is going to be linked up to a mask layer. All right, so let's hide stamp and add another one. We're going to now add sculpt. Sculpt is outrageously fun. So sculpting layers, we can add any number of sculpting layers as well as stamp layers at this point. But instead of a height map or alpha map to be what's pasting on here, it's going to be what you sculpt, basically. So let's do change our operation mode to add. All right, and let's change the level step to something around the 6 or something. We can change the resolution of this mask, so let's just bump it up to 128, and thanks for crashing. Maybe we'll just, for the time being, keep that at its default value. All right, so terrain, we'll do 2K, go back to here. All right. So since that crashed, there's some instability. So sculpt, all right, so sculpt layer and edit. So seemingly we can, sculpt however we want. Whoops. Right now I am raising, so raise lower. You can do add. So this first section, and here is where, and let me pull this whole thing out a little bit so you can see. There we go. So that you can see this a little bit easier. All right. So that was part of the other stream that I was talking about. My other sculpting stream went through each and every one of these elements individually, which is really cool. But we can literally sculpt however we want. Change the brush size. We can change to increase the detail, again, is to increase the level step, which will increase the part of the fractal noise that we're editing. We can lower this back down however we want. We can basically, which is the cool part, whenever we do add, we can assume that what we're doing is adding detail back on top of the terrain. Of course, you can see if I go to the edge of that layer, it is cutting it off. So if you want to edit an area, just keep in mind of that blend zone there. So we can flatten to a certain height. I believe we can flatten the entire thing. Yes, we can flatten the entire thing. So let's go back to overwrite. And let's pull in these just a little bit. All right. Changing my brush size is holding control and scrolling on the mouse wheel. Changing the fall off, let's see, changing the fall off is with brush smooth. There is a button for that, but it has since been replaced. So we can change the smoothness of that, and that would be a little harsher, as well as all the interpolation methods. So the whole premise of this section is this section of buttons has to deal with, how smooth. You see the actual paintbrush. So we're actually sculpting individual elements. But from add to push, this little section has to deal with what we were used to in World Creator 2. That was the little diamonds that you remember pushing and pulling. In World Creator, in the previous version of World Creator, it was this grid. So this is sort of a larger method, and we can hold down Shift to raise and lower what we've just drug. I'm holding down Shift and using my mouse wheel to change the fall off of this section, so we can pull this down, maybe pull this. If I were to select this, and so this is what's called selection mode, and this is painting mode. So I think the user interface aspect of this is going to be a little bit more fine-tuned. But with selection mode, we can basically take, I already deselected it. We can take whatever we want, and let's say we want to rotate it. and I deselected it again. We can rotate this, and wow, that interface did some wonky stuff. There we can scale it. We can duplicate it. So if we wanted to duplicate that area that we painted in, we can. And with raise and lower, it's literally just taking what we did and working with it. So that's sort of the element to sculpting. We can make multiple layers of these however we want. So this sculpt layer can be anywhere, and it's also a square. So we can fit it to terrain. So there's multiple methods we can do with sculpt layers, and we can make multiple ones. So what I would say is, one cool thing is, let's do this as large sculpt areas. And then on here, we can do another sculpt layer. Let's do large sculpt areas as fit to terrain. So fit to terrain for large sculpt. We can do small sculpt. Can't type. All right, so with small sculpt, say we want to just do a certain area. So we will do add, and then we'll make the level step for it really high so that we're adding super fine detail. And we are painting in the little smaller details. Of course, this is still being done at a resolution of 32. Let's see if I do 64. Yeah. So if I increase the resolution for this smaller scale, you can see I am really editing down precisely what I want. So also in this area, that's really strong. If I were to increase the radius, lower the strength, we can basically, ooh, that's big, that's too big. We can sculpt in areas that we want rivers to naturally form if you want. If this area is just a little bit too high, we can sculpt in how we want that to be. And then when you add filters on top of this, you can, let's smooth this out a little bit. So there's a smoothing function that's really cool. So there's multiple functions here. We can select, let's change our brush size here. Say I like this, but I want it to be rotated. So I'm going to change my brush size, select rotate, and you can just literally rotate that element. Or what you're rotating is the mask inside. Rotating the element is part of the selection process, I believe. So if I were to increase this, yeah, I'm rotating the entire element. So is there a way to capture a stamp like a snapshot from your own terrain to reuse on another part? Yeah, you can. I believe you can. Let's see. The idea, well, copy and paste isn't available right now, but presumably the idea is that you can take this and copy and paste it and apply it to something else, so that you don't have to worry about it being duplicated. But yeah, I think the idea is that eventually you'll be able to do just that. Right now, as far as release times, it is locked to the beta stuff right now. So this is available if you have access to it in the online portal. If you don't have access to it in the online portal, I think they're going to be making it a little bit more available to people. I'm not quite sure how that process works. But right now, I did an update earlier, so a new version of this update is coming out Friday, which has some features that I'm going to get to when we talk about filters here in just a second. So last thing in the shape is the map layer. Map layer uses map tiler. If I were to expand this out in this location, and if I were to zoom in and out, we can go and pick where we want to get height information from. So if I go to somewhere here in the Rockies, let's say we like this piece. Let's say we like that. Or how about we go to San Francisco here. All right. And it doesn't look like much right now, but that has to do with its resolution and at which level step it is. So we're going to increase the level step. and you can see it's increasing sort of that footprint. We can change the height scale here. Let's just make sure this fits to terrain. There we go. It's a little easier. And as well as you can change the longitude and latitude. You can zoom in here, or you can just do it however you want right there as well. Maybe we like this island. And so depending on what level step you're at, depends on its sort of information, but you can see the information is a little dependent on where you're getting it from. Let's maybe we like this a little bit better. And height scale, we'll change it back to that, and we'll just blend this in. So you can grab any detail from Map Tiler as long as you have an account and blend that in. I believe, let me just get this smaller back here. Further down, right now you can see the resolution of this is a little poor. If I were to zoom in, you can see the resolution bumps up a little bit. So there is a fine line between what level step this information, you can see it's still there, but let's keep it at 6. And let's say we want to increase the resolution of what we're getting from Map Tiler, which I believe is this height resolution here. So if we change this to affect a little bit higher resolution, of course, you can see it's not too much. So some resolutions will come in a little bit better. So this, I think, is just changing what resolution height map comes in will be affected by this sort of pipeline here. It's not completely concrete yet, but it's getting there. And of course, the further in you go, the higher the resolution it's going to be for what's being imported. But I think there's going to be a big update coming with Map Tiler later on that we'll discuss. So stay tuned for that. Basically, just like a stamp layer, just like a procedural layer, and just like a sculpt layer, a map layer can literally overwrite, add information on top of, or it could be whatever you want it to be. Or you can affect the terrain however you want with, and you can do multiple ones. Say I want to do another map and I want to grab something, something from Iceland here. Say I like that edge there. Now there's one of the buggy things. Both of these are set to overwrite. So which one in order matters a lot. Let's say we'll do this one to add, and we'll set this one to overwrite. So this second one is overwriting, and this first one is add. So that's sort of both overwrites will merge right now, but it should be which one is on top of the other. But you can see here, I can grab that detail. See, both of them are now overriding each other. Resolution, change the level step, and we can kind of play with this detail however we want. We can increase its height scale, and to blend it in the edges a little bit, we can do that, or we can later, once we create a mask, we can pull out this a little bit further. So yeah, that's essentially the shape layers. It's anything to do with capturing the shape of or custom sculpting, basically. So let's go ahead and move along real quick because we can go for a long time on this, can't we? All right, so with each and every biome, again, like I mentioned before, you have the options to have filters and materials for each and every one. Let's lower this a little bit. So let's see real quick. For example, if I want to have an ocean map with different islands that are each considered a separate biome, then do I have to put the biome on Iceland? I mean, if you're wanting to use Iceland as a stamp, you can, or you don't have to. You can create what you could do is you can set the terrain to be 8K, for example, and you can have this biome. Really what you could do is you can have this biome be like sort of the base terrain stuff. So if it were to be super smooth, like what's under the what's under the ocean. So maybe we can add a couple different biomes and say this biome, we want it to be an island. Let's just turn this one off. Let's remove this one. So this biome to be an island. So to get this biome that's the islands, so one island, let's add a biome layer. All right, so we're going to add, the first one is going to be the global. So we're going to match global and fit to terrain. So that is going to be sort of the global level. And when you do water in scene, we could, if we wanted to, you could do something like this and have little tiny islands. Let's just do that, like have tiny little islands there for a second. All right, so now we have the main biome, which is the global biome. Let's add another layer. This one is going to be for the island. All right, well, this island is, you can see the island is locked in right there, but you don't have to do that. We can say this, let's do classic so that it's procedural. And let's move this somewhere over here. So this island, you could just increase its detail. Let's see, mask. If I wanted, here's an issue, I guess, with the procedural method, is that the biome is not going to change its, the biome's not going to change the sort of height. Well, it can change the noise height here, but you're going to want to do a shape probably. So let's do a procedural thing, do a shape. And this shape needs to be probably within, within this element. We're going to have to cover islands more specifically later, it seems. I haven't actually tried to do any of this yet, but that could be a start. And then within the island biome, which is right here, let's increase this a little bit, would be where you do all your detailing. So if we wanted to add filters to have it be a canyon, let's see, ridged, it's going to do stuff to that particular island. I think islands should be its own separate stream right now. It's still a little bit wonky apparently, but that would be sort of my pipeline, is to try and use, really we can do that with one global biome. We can have filters to smooth out all of this detail, and then we can use stamp layers to add different island effects, and then we can have filters and then mask filters around those different islands would probably be the way that I do it. I'll do another stream that covers islands more specifically. World Creator has definitely come way more powerful, and that's the whole goal. All right, let's go back down to 2K here. So the rest of this part is pretty similar to what you're probably already aware of. So let's just rename this biome to be Biome 1 again. All right. So each and every biome that you add, again, will have the options for filters and materials applied to them. So filters and materials. So for filters, you hit the plus icon, you add whatever you want. I'm going to add a steep terrace. So, and then with this terrace, I'm going to reduce the terrace amount here real quick. One really cool thing about terraces was we can rotate them to get these stripy effects. So I'm going to rotate it a little bit like that. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to rotate it a little bit like that. To add another filter, we'll do another filter here. We'll add a sediment and talus. Go to fast render mode. So with talus, we can change the angle like you're used to. Maybe change the length, and we'll lower the height so we can change that height level. So somewhere around there, and maybe we lower the strength a little bit just to get some little wavy effects. Maybe it's Maybe it's super short. I don't know. It's actually, now that I think about it, that looks fairly decent. All right, so of course, we can add multiple filters. The one really cool one is experimental and particle sediment. The particle is really nifty. It's very strong right now. So let's make sure that particles are really low. All right. So we've added a little bit of particles, and for the sake of it, we can add a little bit of mud. And make the length very, very shallow. All right, so we've done something real quick. It probably doesn't look the greatest, but it is something. It's just sort of the general pipeline that we can add multiple filters. And within each and every filter, so let's say, for example, this mud. Right now, this mud is filtering over the entire terrain. But we can hit this little drop-down arrow again to then work on the distribution. So we have a distribution area here, so click plus. And then maybe we want this distribution to be applied to everywhere that has a cavity, a curvature, flow. Maybe we can do it with flow. Heat maps don't work yet. I don't think they work in any part yet. So heat maps don't show exactly what you're doing yet, which would be really cool because I would love to see where it's being applied to, but we can do flow. Let's just do a height distribution. That's pretty easy. So height. And so right now where my cursor is, you can see it's showing it's at 132 meters above sea level. So let's drop this down to 120. Let's do a really hard smoothing line here. All right, so if we were to raise this up, that mud line should be somewhere right there, but it's not quite easy to see unless we turn on the length. Let's increase the length here. Aha, I did not apply. Oh, there it is. That's very strange. All right, so there's a lot of effects going on here. So if I were to lower the bottom value here, you can see that's it's happening between there. Yeah, so that height range was a little weird about why it was doing that. So that's a bug. All right, let's delete sediment. And let's do the same thing for steep. So for terraces, let's say for terraces that we only want terraces, for example, to be just on this hillside. So there's two ways we can do this. Let's go down to distribution. Let's see what you say. Hi, Tia. Are you aware of any course tutorials which takes us from 0 to 100 using Work Creator into our final render engines to deliver high quality visuals? No, except for the ones that I've tried to create. But I'm going to be creating more. I'm going to be creating sort of a pipeline that will do an actual project-based situation where we take a terrain, we take it from here, and we take it to something like Blender and Unreal. We're going to do Unreal here in just a little bit, and then what we can do for a final render. So I'm going to cover that. Who else has covered that? I don't think not many people have covered that. Hey, Adnan, how are you doing, buddy? Good to see you. I haven't talked to you in a long time, man. It is great to have you here. But to answer your question, MV, there's not any start to finish tutorials out there that I know of that I haven't already sort of tried to implement pieces of that. But I do plan on doing a start to finish series, hopefully by sometime this summer. All right, so let's mask this particular filter. Let's do a distribution node and let's go down to mask. All right, so right now you're seeing nothing because the mask is empty and we have no mask to set up. So to create a mask, go down to mask layer, create. And you can see we have a mask layer here. It is completely empty. So let's increase this. And you remember we wanted that filter to be applied to this sort of edge here. So if you remember, let's go to Terrace. Let's select the distribution mask here and let's enable it. So here's our mask drop down and here's mask. So let's rename this mask as Terrace mask. And you'll see if we select the mask distribution layer here, it is now lined up with Terrace mask. So let's edit this mask. You can see it's still the same sort of masking options that we did earlier with the biome layers. So I'm going to increase my brush size. Maybe go up, I'll just keep it at 50% so that we can kind of paint it in nicely. If I were to paint this edge, you can see it turns in white. And if I turn off show mask, you can see it has painted that edge. Let me turn the sun around here. Yes, it has painted that hillside with our terrace. So it's a couple extra steps there. So let's do it again. Mask, let's go ahead and edit. If I don't want to see the mask, because sometimes it's a little hard, we can just turn this off. We're going to be able to change this color later. So say that this black is just white and what you're painting in is a different color. Could be the case. So say we want some terrace in this area right here, and I am painting in that terrace. Let's increase the smoothness some, and let's paint in a little bit further around that edge. All right, I like that. Let's go to this side. Let's say we want to apply a little bit of terrace on this edge. Let's change the strength to 100%. There we go. Or so we want this edge. Now I'm using a super huge brush, so don't worry there. But you can see we have manually painted in where this mask is going to be. So that's how you use the mask layers. So you can create multiple mask layers to do shape up multiple different things. So anywhere where there is a distribution and a mask distribution, you have the option to select whichever mask you want. Let's create a couple let's create one more mask. Let's do this one as, let's just say this one's mud. All right. So I want to paint in mud right through here. So let's paint in, let's say 100%, change our brush size and our brush smoothness down some. There we go. And let's say we want mud to be applied everywhere right there. Maybe we blend that in a little bit. No, that's fine. All right. So we've made the mud mask. So now let's go to the filter. Let's do sediment and mud. Let's drop down this, add a mask distribution, and then choose mud. So now mud is only going to be applied to, right where I have made mud. So that is really strong. Let's blend this out just a little bit. Yeah, so now we are blending this in a little bit better because I did super sharp cutoffs here. Now, with masking, you see how this edge is super sharp? With each distribution and with each mask, if you remember in 2022, the effects that were being applied, we are going, what's one of the features that is coming this Friday is adding effects. So say instead of me having to painstakingly paint in this edge, I could say, all right, I want this mask to be blurred a little bit, to add some Gaussian blur to it. And right now I'm just really painstakingly adding this in and out. Maybe if Adnan had a filter for graphing here in World Creator, I could make this process faster. So all right, so here's that example. We've added a mud sediment to really just this area. And if I turn it on and off, you can see it's turning off that filter too. So no mud. Same thing here. If I turn off the mask itself under the distribution layer, It's adding mud to the entire landscape, but I'm turning that mask back on, and there's mud. If I wanted to move this over here and rotate it to where it's something about right there, and I go back to mask, you can see it's applied that mud right there. So you can do multiple things to customize and edit the landscape. Previously, adding different masks were a little bit finicky because it was not as smooth as this, but this is very smooth by comparison. And so what we've done is essentially we've altered the landscape even further, and these masking elements, these distribution nodes, are really going to change the pipeline to how you work. But the pipeline and the workflow is still very much the same workflow. If I want to add another biome, just add another biome. You see it's the same, but we're going to add biome mask. We'll add 2 masks. This mask will be biome 1. This mask will be biome 2. Mask 1, we will fit to terrain. Mask 2, you can see, is the second biome. So say for the second biome, we didn't want anything, but let's see, let's lower the blend here. Let's say for the second biome here, so biome 2, which is right here, let's say we wanted that strength to be a little bit higher. You can see we've just added strength to that section, and that could be it. Or you can add, now that this one's on top, let's do materials for biome 2. So say for biome 2, we select this material, which is great that we have a little menu, a little viewing panel here to see a preview what the color would be. So let's say that this is red. This entire layer is red. I'm going to move that there. Actually, let's just move it back because I like where it was before. So that's nice that it's red, but what it's also done is it's kept that procedural detail for biome 2 here. If I were to move biome 2 over, you can see that it has now removed the filters from biome 1 and applied whatever filters we were going to have for biome 2 here. Let's change this to be something a little easier to see. And if we were to add another filter for biome 2, let's say it is rocky. Well, we've added a rocky element here on biome 2. Let's add a couple more materials. When you add a material here, you see that you can choose color, gradient, substance material, or a texture. So we're going to add another color. And then, so for this color, we're going to do the drop-down icon here and add a distribution for this color. And let's say for this one, we'll just do flow for this one. Let's change this color to something a little less striking. And let's change this color to be something a bit more striking. All right, so flow has filled in some elements of this this landscape, and we select flow or distribution to change sort of its effects. But with flow, we can, this is a very rocky situation. Maybe erosion rocky wasn't the best one, but you can literally just do a biome just for painting a flow like this. So this is pretty nice. So with color and distributions, it's the same way as filters. If I were to say, hey, I don't want this flow to appear anywhere up at the top. So we can add another distribution, add a mask layer here. We're just going to do this flow we'll select the flow distribution. We'll select the mask and we will change it to flow. So with flow distribution, we'll pull this over here. We'll paint. We'll say, I want that distribution to be just down here at 100%, all the way down in the basin here. And with that, you see that we've added a mask flow distribution just to where we want it to. Clearing your throat is, yep, better to cough lightly. Thanks. Yeah, I apologize about that. But yeah, clearing your throat lightly. Hopefully that wasn't too loud on stream. Apologize about that. But so we only have probably 15 minutes left. Let me quickly run through. Let me delete Biome 2 here. And let's go to Biome 1. Let's remove mask layer here, mask layer there. All right, let's go to Biome 2. Sorry, Biome 1. And let's add another material, but this time let's add a gradient. So gradient is covering the whole terrain right now, but let me get a something tropical here. So I am going to, well, actually, let's get up an image here real quick. Let me open up an image and I will showcase a little bit of gradients, which is really cool. Let me pick a color. Libraries, RD texture. So let's do another RD texture thing. So if I were to open up a texture and let's say forest floor. So we're going to do this one. And I may have to do this off my screen, but we shall see. I can't do this with it on screen. I think that's a bug. Actually, let me try to do that. So with a gradient, you can basically import your own gradient, or you can pick one. So we're going to do pick, and it says hold control to record the colors with your mouse. So I'm going to pull this up here, and let's see if I hold control. Yeah, it's not going to work. So I'm going to pull this off to the side, my side monitor. So I have to click into World Creator for this to work. So I'm going to hold control, and I'm going to move my mouse across that texture image real quick. So I'm going to hold control, and you can see as I'm moving my mouse over that texture, it has applied this gradient. And to end it, you just paste it wherever you want. So right now we've made a gradient, but we haven't told World Creator where it's going to be going because there's a lot of colors here. You can add your own distribution, but your own distribution here is going to just do sort of the global distribution for that entire terrain. So if I were to drop this down to 150 meters, you can see here that this entire gradient is dropped to that level. But it doesn't tell it where it's actually being distributed at as far as the gradient. So that's why we have to choose right here where it says gradient type. So let's just choose something that makes no sense whatsoever. Let's just choose snow. So you can see it started to apply some things, but I remember Stefan saying on Friday that the port from World Creator 2022 to 2023 that you're seeing right here, some of these don't work too well. I know sediment may work a little bit better. So yeah, we can add more sedimentation and change the thickness. Yeah, we can change that up. It's a little, you can see it's a little wonky right now. It hasn't fully fleshed out. Let's turn off this height distribution. You can see the full thing. If we were to change it to rocks, it has a different effect, which is really cool. I think rocks is a really good pipeline for this. So let's say, yeah, right there. So here's all the rocks, various colors. We can move this color on top of gradient. And let's say this color is being distributed based off of cavity. We'll do convex, so it's at the very top. We'll add another distribution, so it's at height. We'll increase the bottom range to be something around right there. But you can see that the gradient is kind of being outrolled here. That's where our gradients aren't working too well right now. So, but you have a lot of flexibility here, which is really nice. We're going to definitely cover gradients a little bit further later on since they're not fully fleshed out yet, but that's the whole premise, is being able to pick colors, import your own gradients. If you had a preset here, so gradient, world creator, let's say snow, the premise here is that I can either take this and drag and drop this snow gradient onto the preview window and it'll import that. Or perhaps you can import or have an option here for selecting a preset. Not entirely sure which method they're going to go with that yet, but that's sort of the general pipeline. Okay. The next material is a substance material. So we're going to click substance. You can see there's nothing being applied yet. To apply the substance, you click the little preview window here. And fortunately for RD textures, all of these already have a substance pipeline or substance file to it. So we'll select this substance file, click open, and you can see, well, that substance file is very dark. Let's do a different one. Let's just do gravel. Maybe gravel is not too dark. All right. So you can add substance files. You can change the UV scaling to be really high. And as well as you can change the distribution for the entire substance. So let's do rocks. Say you want, let's see the roughness threshold. All right. Step size. Let's say for the mass rocks here, all you wanted, it was that substance file to be displayed on where this is being displayed at. But with the substance files, what's cool is whatever you've created in Substance Designer, whatever it's called to now, where you can create your own substance files, all of those settings will basically populate this entire window. So all of these settings were made in as part of the substance file. So I'm not going to worry about changing those right now. It's obviously a lot for that particular substance file. All right, so the next and last one that we can add is an actual textures. So hit plus texture, and if we click any of the nones, this UI is going to be a little bit easier to see. So we're going to click none, and we can find another texture here. Maybe it's forest floor textures. We'll choose the color, click open. The other textures as part of that will open automatically. So you can see that texture opens up automatically. If you want to use the height map or the depth map that came with that texture, you just click on displacement enabled. And you change the height scale, which this may, yeah, there you go. It's actually working a little bit. You can see it's changing the depth a little bit. Yeah, you can see it's affecting the landscape ever so slightly. Oh yeah, it's really fun to play with. That's for sure. But let's talk about real quick, since we have very little time, exporting. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get to Unreal today. It may not work entirely in our favor with time, but we may have to do Unreal specifically in another stream. So with exporting, we have, let's keep the gradient here. All right, so with exporting, we could do that by clicking on the export panel. Oops, sorry. And so if you click the plus icon next to the export panel, you begin the process of creating your own presets. And when you create your own export preset, you basically need to tell it to what maps you want to add to that preset. So let's just rename this preset as, let's just call it number 1. All right, so the number 1 preset, click on the plus icon next to your preset itself. And then it's a little wonky because the code is coming in, but you see height map. We can add a color map. We can add a splat map. I'll come to that in a minute. Normal. And let's add a mesh map. So we can do all these different things. Well, not mesh map, but just mesh. So if we were to have all of these things selected, we can export them individually. But if we have the preset itself selected, we can export every single one of these items together. So that's how you go about with the export process. With mesh, of course, this mesh is going to be pretty high if I were to export it. It's at 2048 by 2048, so you could do some math to know how many vertices that is. There is going to be a method in here to where you can specify the density of it. Right now, there is the option to, well, let me see. It may be just on the other height map stuff. Where is... Okay, so that's not in there just yet. Oh, it is. So under the preset, use project precision. That's what I was talking about. So use project precision is going to use this 1 meter. If I change this to a 0.5 meter, it's going to double the resolution for all of these items. Area is nifty. So if I were to select area, and I think if I went to edit that area, well, area is going to, this is going to be a new thing. So area enabled. So say you want to export just a specific spot on the terrain. You don't want to export the entire terrain. Say I want to export just this little hillside here. When we go to edit or all this stuff, we're going to be able to specify the resolution of that area as well as its location. So that'll be something that's available. You will also be able to export if you have a mask. You can specify that you want this mask to be exported. I think that may be an option at some point. That might be part of Splat Maps. I'll get to that in a minute. So mesh, you have various formats that you can export to, even Octane package apparently. But you can change its sample size. You will be able to normalize it if you want for the heights. You can right now these don't work for. I don't think colors are included or tangents or normals. I think all it exports right now is just the physical mesh. But of course, if you select normal map, you can select a variety of image files to export a normal map. The resolution right here of that normal map, these export panels only just got added at the end of last week, so they still have a long way to go on optimizing the UI for you, but that's how you're going to be working through the export process. A color map is the same color. It'll be export this entire terrain color as one individual map. Height map, obviously, you can export various settings for your height map and specify which engine it is. We're going to have to dive in a little bit further on this, but if you want to export this specifically for Unreal, that's fine, but you'll have to know sort of the min and max height. So the max height is 211 meters. The min height is 36. So we're going to have to do some math conversion to know that's the Z factor scale. And the last thing I want to say here real quick is Splat Maps. So Splat Maps previously will export the different materials or the different filters that you have tied to it. So Splat Map will basically be a mask map or an alpha map that you use in another application like Unreal. Say, for example, we wanted to apply a new color. Let's apply a new color. And let's say we want this color to be flow. All right, so this color is flow. So everywhere where you see a white flow map or a white to flow color, in Splat Map, we will be able to select that as an exported item. As well as under flow here, there will be an option later down the road to export just this flow map. There are a few live streams that I've done on, you should be able to see them on YouTube for exporting and for understanding the Splat Map system between what's considered layered or blended. This is just a straight port over from that process, so it's exactly the same, so nothing has changed with that. So I encourage you to go. Maybe I'll have to link in the description later. I may have to add that, which streams those are. That kind of explains how to know which color is being exported and whatnot. But that's the premise right now, even though this isn't finished. It's by far not finished yet, especially with the bridge tool. The bridge tool isn't working yet. The sync item here should go to Unreal. But as a quick item here, I'm in Unreal 5.1. If I were to open up the prior version, let me try and open up World Creator 2022. 1 second. All right, so we have this open, and I'm just going to open up test 2 here. So I have this. This is what it would look like from World Creator 2022. I have, in this case, 4 different colors on this terrain. So you can see this is what it looks like without materials. This is what it looks like with materials. If I were to go ahead and hit the sync button here, it's going to run the sync options. Now this pipeline is exactly the same as it is planned to be right now for World Creator 2023. So when you hit this little sync button right here, whatever's right here should be ported over to a specific file type. And in Unreal, if you go to and you install the plugin should be right here. You enable it, you restart the program. How to install that is right here is the World Creator Bridge for Unreal 5.1 plugin folder that you download from the World Creator customer portal website. There's documentation here. I would strongly recommend to read that, but it's going to tell you where to install this. And where you install that is, or what you'll do is you'll basically take this entire plugin folder, copy it, and you'll go to whatever Epic Games engine you have. In this case, I have 5.1. Go to Engine, Plugins, and you will paste it in this plugins folder, and you can see I have it right there, World Creator Bridge for Unreal 5.1. When all of that happens, go to Window, World Creator Bridge, and you'll see this bridge window. Here's the location. It'll be a bridge XML file. Be sure to turn on World Partition. Here's the name of the actor. So the landscape actor that will show up in our outliner will be World Creator Terrain. The material name that it's going to automatically create. If you had textures that you had imported into World Creator, it should import those textures here automatically to use. We're definitely going to have a 2-hour stream dedicated to just World Creator to Unreal, I think, because I was hoping to do a little bit more of this, but I don't think I'm going to have time because we're running pretty low. But world scale, you don't have to change that just yet. It's 1-to-1. Grid size is the size for how many segments of world partition you want to split the terrain. So if I had 8, I'm going to change this to 4. And when you hit synchronize, it's going to do some stuff. Hopefully it does it correctly. It's importing the terrain. And presumably, once we get in there, you should be able to see this, everything applied to it. 1-to-1 is the goal. Yeah, and it's holding up a second. So it's probably because, well, that's why I have this terrain at a really high resolution. So it's taking a minute because I did not realize that my precision was at 1/4 of a meter, which means that this file should be fairly hefty. So it's working a little bit slow right now. Yeah, it's going to take a minute. I didn't plan for that. But when it comes into Unreal, it should look just like this, but far more detailed. Yeah, no worries. I've got to leave in probably 10 minutes anyway. So, but yeah, that's the premise. I may have to, that landscape was not the ideal landscape to test this out on, but that'll be the premise in here too. Roger. One thing to keep in mind with the Unreal part about it is that when you do the sync tool, it's all going to be using the same actor. So did that work? You know how I specified this actor name to be World Creator Terrain? If you were to do another sync, it's going to reapply this on top of that. But if you want to import a second terrain with the bridge tool, you need to, before you import it, rename this actor, rename the material, and you'll have to also rename all the textures that are importing as well. I think it's froze up on me there. That's okay. Let's try to redo it real quick with it's actually working. So I hope it doesn't actually close the game. Can real world locations from Matt Tyler and associated satellite images be exported to Unreal 5? Yes. If you're using Map Tyler in World Creator and you export that, whatever you used Map Tyler for, if you're using the satellite image for the height map or if you're using the satellite image for colors, it'll do it both ways. It should import over. Now Map Tyler is probably going to tell you, like it did in World Creator 2022, that you are using data that is unlicensed for something. Do you want to continue or whatever? It's just like a license warning. So to use Map Tyler commercially, the information, as long as it's recognized, you will. I don't know the whole legal ramifications or the terms, but I believe you're going to have to use a license, especially to get the higher resolution images. Right now, I just showcased a free version earlier, and you'll see a Map Tyler sort of watermark that stamps the whole terrain. Plus, it's a little bit lower resolution, I think. But if you have a subscription with Map Tyler, I think you have more benefits with all that. But yes, you can, if you use Map Tyler or any associated satellite images in World Creator, both height map or as texture maps, you will be able to import that over into World Creator just fine. Import that over into Unreal Engine just fine. So, Unreal, I guess, decided to go and kick off a little bit. I just got here, kind of get a quick summary of what is happening here. I'm looking through the site now. Right now, I am just ending the stream actually to quickly show the bridge tool from the previous version of World Creator into Unreal 5.1, and it's taken its time on the import process. But the stream, once I end it here within 5 minutes, will be available to view instantaneously. All right, so it imported, and I'm going to hide the landscape here. You can see here is the landscape in Unreal. It has imported. It should be relatively 1-to-1. You see the landscape here is separated into huge amounts since I separated it into 8 proxies. 8 major proxies. You can see this landscape from World Creator 2022 is now in Unreal using the bridge tool. I am going to dive into this even further in another stream, maybe in a week or two, where we can kind of really dive down the process, especially the material pipeline. The material method that came over is a little wonky. So I am going to definitely highlight this and showcase this further. But the whole premise, really quick, why do you use the bridge tool? Well, the bridge tool in this poor example is to use it as a quick method to, especially if you're going to be using multiple terrains, use it as a vista or a background terrain. Set the precision at its lowest quality without hurting it, so probably 2 meters. For this example, this is a really low resolution terrain. You can quickly import that into Unreal and set it up as a distance landscape. And with that, you can basically piecemeal multiple landscapes together, like low resolution landscapes, and then you can manually import or import a much higher resolution landscape in the middle to be your focus. You can use the bridge tool for your super high quality terrains if you want, but I'm going to have to show you the process of how to edit all the materials. So all these materials, these 4 different colors that you see, all that stuff was generated with landscape layers here in Unreal. I'm going to have to show you how to apply a different texture and graph to, say, these rocks, or a different texture to the flow. So we'll definitely get to that. I may make that the very next YouTube stream, and we'll play around with it with Twitch. So I have 3 minutes left to answer any final questions that we may have missed with World Creator 2022, more specifically here. So the Unreal pipeline, that was sort of the quick and dirty way to get a landscape over, is using the bridge tool for it to set up everything for you right off the bat. But professionals, and the correct way to do landscapes on a more fine-tuned focused area will be to manually import that yourself. And we'll definitely go over that, because you can obviously export height map, export these splat maps or weight maps or alpha maps as masks to be used in Unreal for masking in the different textures onto a landscape as different landscape layers, or as different paint layers in Unreal. And you can import or export a normal map. One trick that I like to do is export using the bridge tool to Unreal at a low quality, and then exporting a normal map separately at a 8K or super high quality normal map image, and replacing the normal map image in the automatically generated material setup that World Creator set up for you, so that your mesh is still low poly, but your normal map and your colors could be super high quality. Yeah, no, the bridge isn't working just yet with beta. That should be coming soon, but you can export all the maps right here under the export preset panel manually, which is probably my preferred method. If you want to make an open world, you can merge different maps building in World Creator together. That is correct. You can, there's probably going to be some different workflows to that, but you can seemingly make this terrain right here is 16 kilometers by 16 kilometers. You can create multiple biomes to fill up different sections as you want. You can sculpt whatever of this that you want. And so for creating an actual open world would be requiring you to export it, knowing that you're going to have to reconnect some pieces in the other software. So, all right, everyone, I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come and hang out with me this morning. We've been going on for a little over 2 hours now. That was the limit that I could do today. I have to head out here real soon, but I really appreciate all of y'all joining me. There was a lot of information that we dove through, especially with the biomes, the sculpting, the masking, and all the layer stuff today. I tried to be as inclusive and cover as much as possible, but if there is something that I missed, or a question that I didn't get answered correctly, or if you have any further questions, just ask that in the World Creator Discord channel and ping me specifically in there to get my attention. But as far as everything else, if you want to see the repeat of this, it is available to everyone immediately after I click in stream. You will be able to rewatch this as many times as you want. I am recording a 4K 60 frames per second version of this for all my Patreon supporters. If you want a much more higher quality experience, the YouTube version that you can watch immediately after this is 1440p. So that should be pretty good for anyone wanting to rewatch it. And we will definitely do another stream very soon. I'm going to be doing a Twinmotion stream hopefully soon too. So if you're into Twinmotion and Unreal, then come check that out. All right. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time.